Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, very hastily arranged, I'm going to be discussing the news that Dominic Raab has resigned. I've got his resignation letter in my hand, and basically it reads, Dominic Raab was sacked. But why did it take so long? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, the timing is not helpful to me. I'm trying to install a new computer. The resignation came in time for me to do the video for noon, but not in time for me to properly consider it, script and all the rest of it. So we're going to go live. The absolute cheek of Raab resigning. I mean, bear in mind, this is about 23 hours after Rishi Sunak received the report. Yesterday, the report into bullying, which has been going on for months, which has cost millions of pounds, as far as I can tell, has it was on Rishi. It was sent to Rishi Sunak before noon yesterday. Hours later, still no statement. Then we had a statement about 4 or 5 o'clock saying there wouldn't be a statement that day. So then we wait till the next day. At that point, it became obvious the report did not exonerate Raab. Because if it had, there would have been an immediate statement. They'd be like, right, publish it. Immediate statement saying, okay, you know, there were some officials who, you know, were upset by, Raab's unconventional management techniques, you know, like flinging tomatoes at people. And but he hasn't actually done anything wrong. We've given this to an expert, and he was an expert, independent lawyer. And they've said, well, nothing wrong there. So it was clear that he wasn't exonerated. At the same time, delaying it like this shows Rishi Sunak to be indecisive and weak, because he'd have wanted to say something fairly quickly. Even if it was several hours later, it should have been yesterday. So then it became the issue that Dominic Raab clearly doesn't want to go. You know, Rishi Sunak's got Dominic Raab in and said, look, this is not good, is it? This is not good. It was all right throwing tomatoes at people, but why did you have to throw a watermelon? Or whatever. I haven't read the report. I don't know what he's done. But, you know, and he's all the news that was coming out yesterday, and even this morning, all the news coming out was of Dominic Raab desperately clinging on to his job, saying he's read the report, he feels that there's no need to resign. And in fact, if I read a little bit of his letter, it just highlights it. So he says he's offering his resignation. It starts off fine. It says, I am writing to resign from your government following receipt of the report arising from the inquiry conducted by Adam Tolley, KC. I called for the inquiry and undertook to resign if it made any finding of bullying whatsoever. I believe it is important to keep my word. Good one, Dom. But he then goes on to say, actually, this report exonerates me of all but 2 charges. So it's all right. He only bullied people twice. And then he goes on to say, I'm not even convinced by these 2 cases. So the rest of the letter is him whining about the treatment he's received, like very Donald Trump-esque, although he hasn't actually said he's the most maligned person in the world. You know, and it's... so he's been trying to cling on. And the news this morning, because the longer it goes on, the more it became clear that what Rishi Sunak was trying to do was one of 2 things. One, trying to work out a way to keep Raab in place without a public backlash. Because there's 2 issues that Raab had to avoid here. A public backlash and a backlash amongst his own MPs. Now, believe it or not, and it is absolutely insane, Dominic Raab does have a following in Parliament. He does have quite a few Tory MP allies. What wasn't clear to me is if Sunak said, no, you've got to go, would Raab's allies engage in a spiteful campaign to make Sunak regret it? Or would his allies go, look, Dom, you know, this isn't good. Ride it out, mate. Go to the backbenchers for the good of the party and all the rest of it. So I didn't know that. I still don't really know. All I know is, for whatever reason, Raab has now agreed that he will have to go. But there was a suggestion this morning that the argument being put to Sunak was that he could use this. He could stand by Raab and say, because what the right-wing commentariat were trying to say is this is the blob, as Cummings used to call it. The civil servants who are really lefty Remainers, and it's a witch hunt, and they're trying to get Raab out. And Sunak, the argument was for Sunak to go for it and go, let's use him as the next wave of our culture wars, standing up to these unelected officials and blah, 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 blah. Absolute madness, though. You could only come up with that line of thinking in an echo chamber. Absolute madness. It's the same sort of madness that gets some people to think that Boris Johnson's still popular amongst the public. It's Rishi Sunak is already going to come under fire for this, because he's going to be asked, first of all, why he appointed Raab in the first place. Sunak has denied knowing about the allegations when he appointed him, but he found out bloody soon after. And also, I don't believe he didn't know about them beforehand, because he's quite close to Raab politically. But he found out immediately, because I found out pretty quickly. No sooner had Raab been appointed Justice Secretary again by Sunak and Deputy Prime Minister. It was all in the news. All these allegations came out in the news. So if I knew about them at the time, he did as well. Sunak chose to leave Raab in place for all that time. And bear in mind, just a week earlier, Gavin Williamson had been forced to resign for bullying. But that was bullying Tory MPs. So obviously, Sunak couldn't get away with a long investigation there, because it was his own colleagues who were upset at him. Raab was only guilty of bullying real people. So that was fine. But he kept him in place all that long. And then when the report comes in, he dithers. I mean, Keir Starmer will absolutely say that in PMQs, dither and delay, because that's his term, isn't it? He absolutely did it for 23 hours. And why? Because he was too weak he'll have known immediately. He'll have seen straight away. It doesn't matter if some of the allegations are not proven. He'll have seen straight away that some of them were, even if it is the two that Raab is suggesting in his letter, because, again, I haven't read the report. And he will have seen, right, he has to, if it was even just one, he has to go. The ministerial code is very clear. Bullying is specifically mentioned in the code. If Raab has been found to have bullied, he has broken the ministerial code. He must resign or be sacked. It's so clear. And yet, Sunak hung on. Why? Because he was too weak to force Raab out if Raab was not willing to walk the plank himself. That is ultimately what's happened here. And that is the line that Labour will take again, because Sunak cannot say he's followed due process, because it's a different due process for everyone. He's now sacked 3 cabinet colleagues, or forced them to resign. Gavin Williamson, Nadim Zahawi, and now Dominic Raab. All of them had a different process of investigation. Gavin Williamson, it was a quick ask around. There was no formal investigation. Nadim Zahawi, it was the ethics advisor investigating. Dominic Raab, an independent barrister investigating. Different process. So there's no due process. And then when he got the report, 23 hours. 23 hours. What on earth is that about? And we know what that's about. It's because Raab was not willing to go. Sunak has spent that 23 hours not mulling it over. He's spent that 23 hours listening to arguments for and against forcing him out. Listening to Raab and his allies say, no, Sunak, mate. He probably calls him Rish, mate. We can use this as another phalanx in the culture wars, you see. We're standing up to the blob, you see. And other people saying to Sunak, mate, look, local elections in 2 weeks. Do you really want this? Do you really want this right now? Obviously, in the end, Raab has either been bought off somehow or, otherwise persuaded. Maybe his own allies, as I say, have said, look, for the good of the party, we've got local elections coming up, and then, and they've probably told him there's always a route back, and there is always a route back. He can go now. He resigns now. 6 months later, he could be back for the next 6 months till the actual election. But there we are. So he has resigned. He had to resign, really. It was absolutely ridiculous that over, yesterday evening particularly and this morning, we were even seriously thinking that Sunak might actually try and stand by him, because that would have been a gift to all opponents of the Conservatives. But there we are. There will no doubt be further fallout later on, but hopefully I can give it a few days. Thanks for listening. Hope it didn't go on too long. It's completely unscripted. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.